the other thing that I want to touch on is that I've got two young daughters. They're athletes. They can work out, or they're forced to work out for their teams up to 4 or 5 hours a day. Now,
Mhm.
if I were to try to do that as a 40 plus woman, my adrenals would go kaput, my hormones would be on the floor, and I would never have energy. So, can you talk a little bit about how we need to look at exercise differently in this perimenopause and menopausal stage?
Yes, I love that. So number one, we have to understand that all exercise actually makes us worse, right? When we do cardio, when we strength train specifically, we're creating these micro tears in our muscles. And I mean, if we look at what's happening, we're tearing our muscles, we're breaking our body down. Now, the only thing that creates this positive effect from exercise is when we pair it with recovery, right? And so we understand now exercise makes us worse, recovery paired with exercise makes us better. But if all we do is exercise, all we do is make ourselves worse. And so if you are exercising more than you're recovering, all you're doing is making yourself worse little by little and digging yourself a hole. Now, the next thing we need to understand specifically for women 40, 50, 60 is that at the age of 30, you started to get and receive compound interest that works against you negatively, right? You started to lose muscle mass annually. And Sarah, like you've alluded to a couple of times now, muscle allows us more food freedoms because muscle, in your currency analogy, is very expensive, right? It
Mhm.
costs a lot of calories or a lot of dollars to keep on our body. And as we build more, it costs more. It costs more calories. So if you're losing muscle every year, you're spending less and less and less. Now, at the age of 40, you're losing 1% of your muscle a year.
Mm.
At the age of 50, that doubles. Now you're losing 2%. And at the age of 60, that doubles again. And now you're losing 4%. Not only is it necessary, or a good idea rather, to be strength training or resistance training, but it's necessary. Because if not, you're going to lose your metabolic health. You're going to lose your calories and your food freedoms. And then you're going to be forced to eat that 1,200 calories unless you want to gain weight. And then, again, before we get into weight loss, we need to rebuild the muscle you've lost to increase your calorie intake. And then we can dive into a deficit from there.
Well, if your scale is staying the same as you're getting older, that obviously means your fat is going up because your muscle's going down if you're not strength training.
Mm-hmm.
So, we see this a lot with the Ozempic crowd now. And does Ozempic actually cause muscle loss? Not necessarily. It's the fact that people are just not eating. So then they're not focusing on eating protein and they're not strength training. They're just seeing their body shrink. Then they get off the drug and then they start expanding again and it's all fat and it's no muscle. And then you're wondering why your metabolism has slowed down even more. Well, you've lost that metabolic burn from the muscle and you've slowed down your metabolism from just a low calorie diet on these drugs. So that's just not to say don't use them or use them, whatever, but that's just an example of in an extreme of what's happening with the body after 40. And I tell my daughters all the time, I'm like, keep that expensive muscle. You have
Yes.
no idea how lucky you are. And keep feeding in that protein and, focusing on the whole foods. And they are not on low carb diets. They focus on that whole foods as much as possible.